Guys, we need to sit down and get moving. We got a tight schedule today. We'll do it at the end when everybody's here. Are you ready?
All right, guys, we're going to get going. I know some people still aren't here. Just stay quiet. Shh. So we'll do announcements at the end if we have any time. We're just going to turn it over to the lab.
Testing. Ooh, good thing I tested. Good, right? Okay. All right. Here we go. I'll keep this short and sweet, hopefully. My dearest Gilman boys. Paul Jakers. Oh, I'm so sorry. Paul Jakers, I'm so sorry. K-pop kid. Oh, K-pop kids. K-pop kids. I'll stay right here, K-pop kids. Anime aficionados. My merry band of desperados. Ooh. Please welcome, once again, our writer at work. And let me tell you, this writer has been working day and night. Honors, Carlson Wee has worked as a professional, ooh, the P's are really popping, a professional roller blader, has traveled the entire U.S. twice by bicycle and once by hitching a ride on freight trains, and has, in his own words, worked for a couple years at a camp deep in the Cascade Mountains. To get there, you had to take a boat 60 miles up a lake, then a bus, another dozen into high desert ravines. There was no internet, no phone, no roads, in or out. Can you imagine? While I lived there, I slept in trees, snow caves, debris huts, and on mountain passes. I made fire with sticks. I tracked animals. End quote. But way more impressive than any of that, he braved the weather to be here with us today. Anders is the recipient of every prize and publication in the book, but perhaps most notably has been awarded $25,000 for the National Endowment for the Arts grant, one of the top awards in the writing field. And his first book ever comes out in just a few days with the exact same press that publishes every college English textbook, W.W. Norton, which is to say, our writer at work is the Jeff Bezos of poetry. I can't imagine a higher honor than that. Welcome, Young Money, Anders Carlson Wee.
What's up, guys? Thank you all for having me. It's really special to be here at Gilman. I got some great friends in town, so I get to come to town, visit some friends. I'm from Minnesota, so I also get to escape the weather. You all had some snow here last night. We have snow for 6 months all at once, so this is a little more mellow for me. Thank you for the introduction, Ben. I'm stoked to read for you all. Thank you all for giving me a little of your time. How many of you all have siblings in here? Basically, everyone's got a lot of siblings. How many of you all have brothers? A lot of brothers. Okay, this first poem's for all the brothers out there. This one's called Dynamite, and it's about a game my brother and I used to play when we were little kids. Dynamite. My brother hits me hard with a stick, so I whip a choke chain across his face. We're playing a game called Dynamite, where everything you throw is a stick of dynamite, unless it's pine. Pine sticks are rifles, and pine cones are grenades, but everything else is dynamite. I run down the driveway and back behind the garage where we keep the leopard frogs in buckets of water with logs and rock islands. When he comes around the corner, the blood is pouring out of his nose and down his neck, and he has a hammer in his hand. I pick up his favorite frog and say, "If you come any closer, I'll squeeze." He tells me I won't. He starts coming closer. I say a hammer isn't dynamite. He reminds me that everything is dynamite. So that's a little love poem to my brother. But my brother and I are actually really close, and we've managed to work it out over the years. We went to some therapy, patched up the blood. But anyway, we've done a lot of traveling together as adults, hopping freight trains around the country, which is something I don't condone. It's a little dangerous. But this one trip we took leaving from Minneapolis, the short version of this story is basically when we hopped on the train, we accidentally dropped our water jugs and they exploded. And so we started this trip across the country with no water. And that was a big problem. It was the middle of the summer, very hot out. And so we started having to figure out how are we going to get some water while we're going on this train across the country. And a couple things to know about this poem. There's 2 words in it you might not know. Bull is a term for railroad police officers that are like trying to catch you. Those are the bulls. And the gray ghost is a type of owl. So this one's called Bird Calls. I crept around the dark train yard while my brother watched for bulls. 2 days deep into the Badlands and all our water gone. We had a bird call for if you saw something and another for if you heard. A silent yard, 8 strings wide with a few junkers parked. The horizon, a dull burn. The rails lit dimly by dew. I was looking for the water bottles the conductors used and threw out the windows with maybe a sip left inside them. I found one by stepping on it. I sucked it like a leech. I stumbled up and down the ballast and found 5 more, unbuttoning my shirt and nesting them against my chest, upright and capless. We had the sandpiper for if you should run, and the flycatcher for if you should hide. I can't remember why we had the loon. I crouched in the space between coal trains, cradling the bottles and feeling the weight of how little I had to spill. I rubbed coal on my face. I felt crazy. I thought about being found like this. I tried to imagine what my story would be. A version with my brother in it. A version with no brother. I swear I could smell rain 1,000 miles away. I could smell rain in the soot. I folded my hands around my lips and made the gray ghost, which told him where I was, and also meant stay alert, and also meant some other things only owls understood. Thank you all, yeah, right on. So I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. You all seen the movie Fargo? Is that familiar to people here? So that's where I grew up. It's a very bleak place, very flat, dry, and very violent place. And one thing that happens there in the springs is the river there that flows through town is called the Red River, and it flows north. And what happens in the springs is that the ice sheets in Canada are still frozen, and all the water is trying to push north. And these floods happen where the river sort of backs up and fills the city. And it's an eerie type of flood because it'll be a perfectly sunny day, there's no storm, and the town will just be like slowly sinking under this water that's rising very quietly. And it's like this devastating silent force. So this poem's about a time during one of those floods. This one's called Clausen's Dog. We float the rubber lifeboat down the cul-de-sacs, through the backyards of prefabs and ramblers where the tops of small trees beckon like oil-blackened hands. We're looking for animals, dogs and cats and other pets left behind because leaving them behind was the rule during the evacuation. For hours, there's nothing. Silence and the sculling of a plastic paddle, the far-off gas station sunken past the pumps, the 100-year flood covering everything 3 feet deep. When we find Clausen's dog, it's not where we were told to look, not curled on his roof, not barking from the glassless window of his attic. When we find Clausen's dog, it's tied to a cinder block with a choke chain leash, an ear flap lapping softly at the surface. The chain cinches down through loose neck flesh to the visible bone. A minnow hovers in the eye hole. When we find Clausen's dog, the colorless fur clumps like a stubble of bunch grass receding from the furrowed plains of the ribcage. The bobbing side meat nibbled by perch, chunks glommed away by turtles. When we find Clausen's dog, the bone paws drag the bottom like lures, lurching forward on the same wrist hinge as the living paws of a sleeping dog, whimpering, trying to run inside a dream. So you guys want to do another fight poem? Does that sound good? This is like the sequel to that first one. My brother and I had a lot of fights, so it was hard to pick out which ones to bother describing and which ones to leave alone. But this one's called Polaroid, and this has a little bit more to do with the aftermath of a kind of violent scene between brothers, and you'll pick up on how that's working. This one's called Polaroid. A loose flap of skin passes just below his eye. Bruises ride the bridge of my nose. The dark ropes of handprints grip both our necks. Our fresh buzz cuts lumpy with goose eggs. It's easy to forget we were trying to kill each other, or at least I was. But what I wonder now is why our father shot the photo before he bandaged the hole where the nail went in, stuffed my raw mouth with gauze. We stand side by side against the garage, eyes focused just beyond the lens, each pointing at what we did to the other. So that's a little picture of a photo my dad took of us. Thank you. How are we doing on time? Should I do one more or two more? One more? Okay, cool. So this next one's another one about hopping freight trains. The only thing you really need to know about this one is in Canada, they have a special kind of train car called a Canadian grainer, and it has a big round hole that you can climb inside and hide, and it's a good place to hide and not get caught. And that hole that you climb inside is called the Owl's Eye. So I'll just do one more for y'all. Thanks for listening. This one's called Riding the Owl's Eye. Out of all the dumpsters that could have been empty, all the weather that could have bloomed over the prairie and ruined me, all the cars that could have sped by without hesitating and left me on the fog line, nameless forever, the trains that could have taken my legs, the men that could have pulled a switchblade and opened me like a flood enfolding the red North Dakota clay. Out of all the hazards we pass through in amazement, all the stories we tell of luck and good fortune and prayer and survival, it is always our own lungs that dry up and darken, our own miles that straighten, our own hunger that wanes. The Lord gives us mountains, and we fail to mine out that grandness. The Lord gives us trains, and we waste those distances transporting coal. Some say the world is broken. Some say the good Lord has forsaken our dreams. But I say it is our own throat that grows the cancer, our own asthma that blackens our breath to a wheeze. And the truth is, the mile-long train will always crawl past. The socket-fixed gaze of the owl's skull will always turn perfectly backwards. We will always be bodies among ghosts. And what is important to them is not how we ride on the westbound freighter, not how we shiver, not how we crawl crooked and thin and climb yet again into the trembling eye hole. It is not about suffering. It is not about fear. We must peer out from inside the owl's eye. Watch the coal dust cook in the wind eddies. Watch it linger. Watch it spiral thinly as it bruises the blue-faded mind of the buffalo sky. We must be the pupil that swells in the coming darkness, the cargo worth carrying across the distances. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do a couple announcements. Mr. Rogers, do you want to start? Coach Matthews.
Any 9th or 10th graders who don't have a helmet yet, lacrosse helmet, but you need one before Monday, you should go to the athletic training room today and see Coach Nick in there at 4:15. So after athletics get started, go to the training room. He will be able to get you a helmet so you're ready for Monday. Thank you.
I'll start back first.
Just a nice note for our advanced art guys. We have a showdown monument selfies down in that little park area opening tonight. All our advanced art guys are involved. It's great. Things that work out.
Mr. Conley, five to seven, correct?
5 to 7.
5 to 7. So it's right up, you all know where it is. It's right by the Rome Park pool, right? Right on Winehurst, is that where it is?
Not exactly.
Oh, no, it's in Rome Park.
Rather, it's Petit Louis.
Oh, right, next to Petit Louis, right there on Roland Avenue, okay, right down the street.
John Myerkakis, Chase Baker, Parker Pierce, Rachel Perry, and then Bryn Mawr, Chris, Austin Burr, and Katie Humphrey. Lovely work, and a really nice town.
Let's take one more. Ben, do you have one?
We got Mr. Ford, too. Mr. Ford.
Freshmen, you are not allowed in CT20 tomorrow because of the blood drive. Plan accordingly.
Yep.
Mr. Miles Guy, you can go to lunch, please.
RedCrossBlood.org. Upper right-hand corner. Enter Gilman.